Welcome to another episode of the Hail to Michigan podcast. I am your host tonight, Matt. Ronnie is under the weather tonight, so we hope Ronnie's doing okay. As always, we're joined by Contown. Contown, how are you?
Doing good. Thinking of Ronnie. Hope Ronnie's doing better. Seems like we're taking turns. So if I come back from Madison this weekend with a bug, guess it'll be my turn next week.
Oh, I forgot you're going to the game.
Yeah,
Have you ever been there before?
never been. I've got a few Scotty friends, and I've heard really good things about Madison, but it's been my first time.
Yeah, so I went in 2017,
Okay.
which would have been the Brandon Peters game
Yeah.
where he got hurt. And the one thing I will recommend with it being a noon game, get most of the bars in the area near the stadium had like tickets to get in. So, and we didn't have the best tailgating plan. We stayed out a little too late the night before.
Okay.
Uh, so I would just being different than Michigan Stadium. You know, I've been to Ohio Stadium before, so I kind of know the layout there, tailgating spots and stuff. But you know, having some Wisconsin friends, I think, will be beneficial to you for getting the lay of the land a little bit more because we were just kind of walking around. We ended up stopping at a house party, and none of us were in college anymore. Uh, but the Wisconsin fans were good people. So, and
Okay.
it's a pretty neat stadium.
Yeah, it'll be my third Big Ten West trip. I've been to Northwestern. And then I was at the 2016 Iowa game, which
Oh,
was brutal, but enjoyed Iowa, enjoyed the Iowa fans until like 2 minutes left in the game. And so heard good things about Wisconsin too. So I'm hoping it's similar. Kinnick Stadium's really beautiful. Hoping Camp Randall's maybe a little thinned out. 11 a.m. kick coming off of a rough loss. Maybe it's not as rowdy as normal.
yeah, it the year that I went, they were ranked. I don't remember what they were ranked. I don't think they were top 10, but it was a big game for both teams at the time. Kind of more on the line than right now. You know, Wisconsin's kind of teetering right now. And I heard somebody, I believe it was the Cover Three podcast. They were talking about Wisconsin in general, and that defense is going to revolt if Mertz and the offense don't turn it around because that defense has been lights out.
Yeah, they have. I think they're definitely top five in SP plus right now. I think they're first. They're the number one defense in opponent yard per carry. Like it's classic Wisconsin defense. But like you said, if the two units aren't playing complementary to each other, the one unit can kind of wilt.
Yeah, I think that'll be interesting to watch, especially early in the game. Let's get into Rutgers first. We'll have
Mm-hmm.
another episode later this week, getting a little bit more into Wisconsin. Let's get into this Rutgers game. We'll start with the offense. That seems to be the more maligned unit from the game. Give me your thoughts on the offense and the rushing attack on Saturday.
So I think this has been said all across all corners of the online Michigan fan base, but it was really the tale of two halves. You had first drive of the game was like a classic Harbaugh Stanford ball, which is I think some people are trying to label this team as, and I don't think that's quite accurate. But this was a 17 play drive, and 15 of those plays were runs. They just took about half of the first quarter off the board and they kind of did what they wanted with the Rutgers front. They converted, I believe, 3rd and 8 on a run to Corum. Like back seemed like they were seeing everything. The O line was moving people on that first drive, and then obviously they got the touchdown. But the rest of the half was a little more pass heavy. But I thought the run was there when they needed to be. They hit a couple of big RPOs where the Rutgers defense kind of dictated the pass, but solid half, not on the ground for Michigan, not the explosive plays that we've seen previously. But then, in the second half, the run game kind of froze up, and I think what you saw was a few things. It was a combination of they ran a lot of zone, as opposed to, some of the gap stuff that they had been doing with like a lot of the heavy counter plays. They went more inside zone and split zone. And, this was kind of the first heavy front, like consistently 7-man box that Michigan was running into. And Rutgers plays, they just do a ton of stunts. They're tilting the nose constantly. They're slanting the line. They're throwing blitzes and, putting defenders in places you don't expect there to be defenders. And I think this was kind of the first defensive line test in a way that Michigan saw. Washington should have a good front, but they were in a nickel a lot of the night. And so I think, the combination of that and running zone, which I don't think they're necessarily as good at, but I think they were looking for a chance for the backs to make a play. I think kind of gummed things up on the ground in the second half. And situationally, I think they just ran fewer plays and they got into a position where towards the end they were trying to bleed clock. So, I think I think the offense as a whole was really good in the first half. I think the second half, obviously the offense stagnated completely, but it was also not many plays. We just went through it before we started recording. We ran 22 plays in the second half, 7 passes, I believe 15 runs. And I think that probably includes the 3 kneel downs. So definitely issues. I think some were Rutgers specific. I think a couple players, including the running backs, probably had not their best games, but I don't think it was a full bad game or necessarily something that you would predict to keep happening. I think Michigan played one pretty bad half of football, and that's that.
Yeah, I think the point you mentioned on the loaded box, you knew that was going to happen eventually. Just a matter of who brought it out first. I thought Washington was overly stubborn about not loading the box.
Yeah.
You mentioned them playing nickel so much, and you know it seemed they wanted to take away the pass, which bold strategy. But Cade is going to have to. Teams are going to put Cade in position to where he's going to have to be the guy that beats them. Teams are going to load the box. That's going to continue to happen until the passing game and Cade show that they can beat teams through the air. And I expect to see a lot of base 3-4 out of Wisconsin. They have played quite a bit in years past. They have played quite a bit of nickel against Michigan. It's a little bit difficult with Michigan because when they're in their 11 personnel and they still want to run, if you don't match with a nickel, it's going to be difficult as a defense. So Rutgers, I thought, did a good job of we ran a lot of 12 personnel, so let them be in base, let them kind of stack the box. And I thought early they did a good job of taking away counter. I felt like we tried to run that a few times on the first drive, and the first drive was mostly successful, but I didn't feel like there were as many pops in the first drive, and maybe that's what they saw. That zone would be working a little bit more. I think that's going to be a theme moving forward with defenses just loading the box and forcing Michigan to beat them through the air. Let's get into the passing game a little bit. Coming out of this game, I think the talk of changing quarterback, especially at Wisconsin, is crazy. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think I would prefer it to happen, but I do think there are things that to be improved. I thought Cade was excellent in the first half. Give me your kind of breakdown of Cade's game and the passing game overall.
Yeah, so I fully agree. I thought Cade had an excellent first half. He was 8 for 9, well over 100 yards. I think over 150 yards in the first half. Yeah, looking at the halftime stats, he had 156 yards in the first half. But yeah, 8 for 9, barely missed. The one incompletion was actually a pretty good ball. It was like I don't know, you want to call it a slot fade or a corner route, but it was basically through a jump ball to Mike Sainristil in the south end zone down there. And I thought it was a good ball. You might run that with someone other than Mike Sainristil. D-back made a good play on the ball, but no, Cade was really crisp in the first half, on schedule. Only the 8 or 9 passes, but super efficient. Kind of looked like himself against Northern Illinois. And then, people point to, I've heard different things. I've heard it was, some people think it was the targeting call, the hit he took on the targeting call that rattled him. Some people have said the missing Schoonmaker in the end zone. But, at some point, right towards the end of the first half, something changed with Cade and he kind of started playing very tight. If it was the targeting call, it was, I think the next throw he had was the miss to Schumacher.
Uh-huh.
And, there you get the play action where Schumacher slips, but he still comes open. And Eric Hall is probably open underneath too. So he had two options and missed both. I think he threw to the spot he had determined kind of pre-snap that Schoonmaker would be in if it was on schedule, but it obviously got off schedule and he didn't adjust. And then second half, we just didn't see the same Cade. He was short arming stuff. He wasn't seeing the field very well. He underthrew the out to Henning by about 3 yards. There was another slant to Sainristil earlier on the series that Sainristil should have caught, I think, but it was also put the ball on his knees in traffic instead of in his chest. So it was kind of like the rest of the offense tail two halves, and I think maybe that's something to look for with Cade. We saw similar in the Washington game where he just wasn't seeing the field and he wasn't on time like he normally is, and he wasn't throwing the ball super well. So I don't know what it is. I don't know what triggers it, but that's something that Michigan and Cade needs to be ready for going to what's going to be the best defense so far. Maybe we see all year next week in Madison.
Yeah, that one particular drive, it just seemed like we had schemed a couple guys open. Good play calls, good routes, and then he just was off just a little bit, and that seemed to be kind of the story of the day in the second half. I will say on the slot fade to Sainer still, I understand the sentiment absolutely. You've got Dalen Baldwin, you've got Cornelius Johnson, you've got some bigger wideouts. Heck, even Andrell Anthony is known to be a jump ball type of guy. I will say, running the slot fade to a smaller slot, the reason they're doing that, he's not throwing it to Mike Sanders still because he's the best jump ball guy Michigan has. They're getting a matchup with a safety.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting the matchup they want more so than worrying about who they're throwing it to. They're looking to get the guy in the slot matched up on the safety. And that's what it was. And the safety made a good play. Can you get a safety matched up maybe on Cornelius? Maybe so. And that can certainly be argued, but that's what they're going for there, I think. And I think a lot of people, not you specifically, but I think a lot of people were mad about that. Like, why don't you throw the fade to the 6'3" guy? Well, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. But if the 6'3" guy is guarded by the 6'1" guy, that's different than, your slot receiver
Right.
being covered by a safety.
Right. No, I mean, there's a reason the slot fade has become so popular, and
Yep.
it's like you said, it's matchup based. So, and to Mikey's credit, we've seen him make like contested catches and jump ball plays.
Yep.
Before.
He's came down with some acrobatic catches before. So, before we move over to the defense, one thing we discussed a little bit offline. Let's get into the end of half management on the final drive. I know that's been a big talking point under Harbaugh. He certainly is not the best coach at end of game management or end of half management, end of game management. But if you watch enough football, especially college football, there are not very many coaches that are actually good at it. In the NFL, it seems like there's coaches are a little bit better, especially the coaches that happen to have elite quarterbacks. But let's get into your thoughts on the decision making there. Get the ball with less than a minute left. I think all of us would have been happy at the start of that drive with 3 points. We would have been thrilled. But the circumstances change when you hit a big play on first down. So what were your thoughts on the management at the end of the half there?
I really don't have a problem with how they handled it. I just pulled it back up so I know like the timestamps here. We snapped the ball on first and goal with 13 seconds. And so 13 seconds, you're thinking, we talked, like you said, we talked a little off air here, 4, maybe 5 seconds of play. And you got, your run game has been so successful all year. You run on first down and you have 2 timeouts. So usually you're thinking, okay, we've got maybe 2 plays that we could potentially run on, and then maybe you have time for a pass, or you run and then you pass, and then you still should be left with, maybe 6 seconds left, 5 or 6 seconds. But so you run on first down. I think that's fine. You trust the run game that's been working for you all year. You've got 2 timeouts, totally reasonable decision. they run split zone, and I think Eric All gets a really good knock on his guy. They motion him into the split zone, and I think if Haskins cuts into the backside hole there, he probably scores. But instead, you get this pile, and the refs don't blow the whistle until 9 seconds. But he was in the pile at like 11 or 10, so you get a bit of a longer pile, so you lose maybe a second there. And then the next play is the play action pass, and that anything play action takes a little bit longer to develop, so that takes you all the way down to 5 seconds when the ball hits the turf. So, and then 5 seconds left, like we said, 4 to 5 seconds, you're kind of right in that gray zone. You throw a ball, it gets tipped maybe, and then it's up in the air. Waste another second, that could be 5 seconds. So you got to take the points, I think, at that point. And yeah, based on that, I think they played it correctly, because you don't take the points, maybe you throw a fade and it gets batted, it bobbled around, it gets picked, whatever. Either way, you don't get any points, and then it's 17-3 instead of 20-3. That's worst case scenario, and I think people would be even more mad than they are. So I really don't have any problem with how they handled the end of the half situation there. They went to the half with a timeout in their pocket, but I don't know. I don't know that they necessarily could have done it better.
Yeah, the thing that I was always told, the amount of time per play in college was 4 seconds. Was the average play is 4 seconds. So when you have 13 seconds left, you're thinking you're getting 3 plays pretty much at the most. So I thought, my thoughts during the game and after rewatching that sequence was just, the management was fine. It wasn't great, but when you combine fine management and poor execution, it's a bad recipe. And nobody. If we hit an open receiver, you mentioned the hole on the first down run play. Those questions don't even come up if we hit one of the wide open tight ends there. So
I think
let's get in.
maybe the only thing, and this, I don't know if this is, hindsight's 2020. Maybe you throw on first down. Maybe you run the play action first, and then you've got 2 timeouts to maybe try to pound the rock twice. But yeah, no,
Yeah,
like you said, I think it was fine.
yeah. I think the only thing with the only reason they run, obviously they that's their identity in the run game is what they're banking on. But with the 2 timeouts, I think that's what makes the run okay. But I agree, in typical situation like that, you prefer to throw on first down.
Mm-hmm.
But let's get into any other thoughts on the offense before we switch over to the defense.
Not really. I was maybe a little more negative, had more negative feelings about Cade immediately after the game, but since I've come away from it, I think I've softened that a little bit. I'm certainly not in the like you make the change right now camp, like you said. So I'm glad they've got Cade going into next week. I think it'll get better, and I don't think it was all Cade. You had guys like Saint Rachel could have caught the ball that I mentioned earlier. The Eric All kind of cut off a route they ran in the middle of the field. So
Yep, I
I think
just
Cade will,
watched that play. He had the
yeah.
shallow cross, but he even waited, which was a good
Mm-hmm.
decision to get the dig over the middle a little bit deeper, and he threw it too far to the middle, and all kind of cut off. So it was open.
So it felt like kind of everyone at some point in the second half got tight, and I don't know. I certainly don't think Cade played a good half of football, but I think it's maybe a little more team wide than just the one quarterback position.
Yeah, the quarterback always gets the most scrutiny, and the backup quarterback's everybody's favorite
Mm-hmm.
player. But in this particular case, we happen to have the 5-star freshman is the backup. This isn't just John
Right.
O'Corn back there, and let's you know pop it over from Wilton to John O'Corn. This is proven, well, proven talent, I should say. I think the big thing with Cade, and I said this on game day, and I still feel this way. First half, Cade, Michigan's going to be just fine. They're going to win a lot of ball games. Maybe not every ball game, but if he plays like he did in the first half, they'll be just fine. He's capable, has played fine up until this point. The identity is still going to be running the ball, so I do think he has a little bit of a fallback there. But he's got to hit the open guys, play like he did in the first half, and It'll be all right. The whole offense was inconsistent in the second half, had no, barely had the ball at all, couldn't get anything rolling, penalties, just choppy in the second half. So get back to work this week and practice with Cade, and I think they'll be able to correct some of those mistakes. Let's move over to the defensive side. Rutgers ended up with some pretty good statistics, actually, offensively. Pacheco had a nice day. A lot of carries for him. Their passing game was kind of what we've seen teams try to attack Michigan with when they're in their cover three. They're trying to attack the short sideline. Give me your thoughts on. Let's start with the run defense. Give me your thoughts on Michigan's run defense against Rutgers offense.
So, I think a big talking point coming out of the game was that the D line got whipped a little bit. I've heard some pretty negative takes on the D line play, and on my rewatch, I didn't really share that sentiment. I thought the D line was fine. I actually thought Chris Hinton played maybe his best game of the season. I thought he had a pretty good game.
Best game of his Michigan career, in my opinion.
Yeah, I thought he was really good. Mazzy and Chris Jenkins, I thought were up and down. I thought Chris Jenkins was solid. I thought Mazzy was up and down, but he had good moments. Same with Jeter. Maybe if you had to pick a guy on the interior rotation that I thought didn't have his best day, maybe I would say Jeter. But there were still moments where he got pushed and he was the big body standing up to double teams you want that you're trying to get out of him. You don't expect him to be Aaron Donald, but I thought the D line was fine. I thought the edge guys and Aiden. I thought Aiden had a typical Aiden game. They chipped him a ton with Pacheco. Everything was quick passes, like taking advantage of the open hitches, as you mentioned. So they obviously tried to avoid giving Aiden too many opportunities, but he did get the one sack, and he was. I'm sure his presence was felt by Vidral. I thought the front had a pretty good game. I thought maybe Mike Morris wasn't spectacular. I think he overran a few things. Maybe they coached him to attack the dive on some of the like straight up read options that they ran, but he really attacked the dive on a few Vidral pulls. The big play that Rutgers had success with was that power read. It kind of looks like veer, but you get the one guard is blocking like power. And I think, on rewatch, who Rutgers was reading on that play changed. My initial reaction post game was, they wanted to put the younger linebackers in conflict as soon as Ross went out with that stinger. They definitely did that some, but I think, in addition to Mullings, sometimes they were reading Dax on that. And I think in a couple times they ran Veer and Red Jenkins. So, linebackers are a very hard position to play, and losing a guy like Ross, who was having a very good game before he went out and who is your senior leader, it puts a lot of stress on a young defense playing in a new scheme and playing against a good scheme across from them. Rutgers doesn't have great talent on the offense, but Sean Gleason, their offensive coordinator, is a really clever guy and runs some good stuff. So they put the right guys in conflict, and then they would read Dax when they went heavier to get pull Dax into the box, and then read him on that power read. So that gassed us a few times, but then once the field compressed in the red zone, the defense held their own. And honestly, overall from the defense, I thought it was a solid performance, all things considered, considering how much they were on the field, considering they lost Ross, and considering that Rutgers threw really the best of their playbook at them. I thought it was a fine defensive performance.
Yeah, I think on that inverted veer, the front side power read, I thought that was where they played the most games. I mean, they were mixing it up a little bit, as you suggest, but it was good to see. We mentioned, I mentioned on the board, and then also talking to you and Ronnie offline. That linebacker seems to have been in a position, whether it was for Devin Gill, screaming for him to be replaced, or Jordan Glasgow under the previous staff. Everybody always wants the new shiny toy at every position. We all follow recruiting. Everyone wants the young guy to play. Linebacker is one of the hardest positions for that to happen. D line certainly, technique wise, is probably the hardest. But linebacker, there's so much that goes into it, and you start messing with their reads and their keys, and it can be difficult. And those young guys are talented. Nakai and Junior have both played a good amount already. But Mullins was really the guy getting thrown to the fire there. And for them to come out, I remember MGO Blog's old charting. I believe it was just above zero was the goal, was what he considered okay. Good, good linebacker play.
Yeah.
It was like a +3 on the day. So it's hard to play linebacker well. And I think, especially considering the fact that three of our four inside linebackers being so young, that got a bunch of run on Saturday. I thought coming out as okay was a big win for them. And the run defense, I did leak some yardage, but I felt the same way on first watch about them. I don't feel like they leaked a ton. I just saw I've got the every snap running currently, and they are reading that end in the 3-4. So it looks like Dax winds up being the one getting edge, but they are
Yeah.
still reading the end on that. But yeah, I think Rutgers played better in the second half. Aiden was a monster all
Mm-hmm.
day long, and I think the D linemen, the interior guys, I should say, will continue to improve throughout the year. Big test for him this upcoming week. And, another guy, and we'll get into him a little bit more when we start to talk about the pass here. But I thought Brad Hawkins played a very good game. I think his presence in the run game was felt, and I think he saved a couple big ones from happening.
He had the excellent play. I believe it was on Rutgers' first drive. First quarter certainly on 3rd and 1. They just ran veer, and I thought the whole defense played it perfectly, and we stopped the keep, force the give, and Hawkins was on Pacheco and beat him. I think he beat him to the line of scrimmage. Certainly stopped him short of the sticks, and strung it out long enough that Ross and Nikhai Green were able to get over there. So yeah, no, I totally agree. I think quietly Hawkins is having the resurgent season that we were hoping to get out of him this year. Hoping to see him have. Doesn't seem like he's ever been talked about post game as having a great game, but yeah, I think he's a big part of this defense, and kind of one of those guys that you might not get the name called too much, or you might not have like the limelight post game, but I think he does a lot for this defense.
Absolutely, absolutely. I just think him being reliable in the right position, similar to Metellus, and he gets similar criticism, truthfully, but
Mm-hmm.
he has shortcomings. I don't think he'll ever be, a long-term NFL roster type guy, but he can really help a college defense, and I think he's played well this year. So I want to give a little bit of credit there to Brad Hawkins. Let's get into the pass defense a little bit. Not a ton of downfield shots. I mean, just a bunch of short, quick game stuff. They even testing the edge on bubbles and things like that they did more than I thought they would.
Mm-hmm.
What were your thoughts on the pass defense in this game with Vidral having success, but not near what they had in the run game?
Yeah, I mean, I think like you mentioned, it seemed like for the longest time in the game, Michigan was content to give up the hitches and the underneath stuff on the quick passing game, and I think that's a fine strategy when you're comfortably in control of the game. Make the inferior opponent go on long drives, but late game scenario when it's a one score game, you can't allow Rutgers to be in ahead of the chain so much in the second and 4-3-2 scenarios. So I think eventually Michigan adjusted and walked the corners up, but maybe a little too late in the game. I just don't think Vidal as a passer commands that level of respect. So I may have tightened things up a little earlier, and that's that's the coach's call to make. That's nothing on the players, but I may have tightened things up a little bit earlier when the defensive staff kind of saw that our offense wasn't getting it done, and we had to maybe put a little more pressure on Rutgers offense to make the plays. But no, I think I think the secondary is pretty good. I think Dax is Dax. You really don't have to worry about him. He's just an excellent cover guy. I I actually think Dax had a pretty poor performance in run support at times.
Hmm.
Maybe up and down is a better way to put it, but I know Michigan got gashed on one play. I'm not remembering the time in the game, but where Dax tried to go under a block, kind of seems like uncharacteristically for him. He whiffed on the one sack that
Hmm.
really timed the blitz well, and then just whiffed on the quarterback. But in coverage, Dax was great. Probably should have had the pick on the goal line there where he and Mullings collided. I think Vincent Gray has been great in coverage. I think Javon Green continues to be in great position in coverage all the time. I think, still waiting for him to become a great playmaker on the ball. He had the
Hmm.
interception go off his bicep at the end of the first half, and that's something we really need to catch if Mertz gives it to us next week. But I thought the coverage was really good. Even the underneath stuff that we were giving Rutgers kind of for free is not necessarily a coverage issue because we were playing, what the coaches called. So I'm really surprised with pleasantly surprised and overall pleased with the secondaries play 4 games into the year.
Yeah, I think one thing to remember is this Rutgers offense put up, I believe it was over 400 yards passing against Michigan last year with a lot of the same guys, and he had under 175 on Saturday. I think that kind of short stick, the hitch on the sideline,
Mm-hmm.
especially when we're playing a noticeable cover three shell. They disguise it somewhat, but for the most part, when we're in cover three, our corners are pretty far off the ball at the snap. And for when we're in nickel for you know the nickel and then the other safety to get out there for that hitch when it's thrown, a second after the play. That's what you're giving. That's what you're conceding with that defense. So yeah, I agree. I think the coverage was pretty good, and I agree with your assessment of the individual players. I thought Dax could have been better. He could have walked and got that sack on the
Yeah.
blitz just with his timing and everything. Just come in under control a little bit, and that's on the highlight film next time.
Mm-hmm.
I kept waiting for in the second half McDonald to run a Brown called it trap, but it's just cover two essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what they got him with on the Dax play at the goal line where he almost made that jumping interception.
Yes.
I think unless Dax just came off, unless they were in man and Dax just came off as man, but it looked like they baited them into that out. And I was thinking that was going to happen, not necessarily at the goal line, but you know they kept hitting that hitch, which is essentially an out when it's outside the numbers. They kept hitting that hitch against cover three, and I'm thinking, God, he's gonna trap him one of these times in two, and we're gonna jump one, and it never came, and other than the goal line play. So I think clearly the group that they want to go with when they go to nickel, the top four, I'll call it, now includes Morris, and I expect him to continue to get better as a pass rusher. He hasn't really in the first game when they played a bunch of 5-1-5, he was inside, so he hasn't come off the edge a bunch prior to this game. But it looked like this game, I noticed specifically, him and Aiden on the edge and the nickel most of the game, the majority of the snaps, which is a change from Harrell, and they've played a different guy there really kind of every game opposite Aiden. The linebackers I thought were okay in coverage. Nakai almost had they ran a crossing route that, the announcers said what a great pass, which it was. He fit in a tight window, but it was a terrible decision. And Nakai almost had a pick. That was kind of midway through the third. Overall, the defense, especially considering the time of possession, the offense with three and outs in a row, I thought the defense played a great game, despite the yardage numbers maybe not reflecting that. Anything else you want to cover from this game? AJ Henning had another punt return. Anything else? Special teams, defense that we're missing?
So I just watched that the play we were talking about with Dax. We were in man, and he came off his man to come up on. The guy had, the target was running kind of like a swing route in on Mullings, with two guys running ins or slants, kind of just basic pig play, and Dax got wise to it and came up. I don't know that was actual great opportunity for an interception. It was more, he made a good play, and I don't think Mullings caused us to not have an interception there. But great play by Dex, regardless. But yeah, in terms of anything else, I thought Brad Robbins had an excellent punt. He had a bad one as well, but the punt was really fun to see. Always fun to see a punter go crazy after get the ball to bounce at a right angle inside the 10-yard line. And the crowd, yeah, it was nice to see the crowd kind of went crazy with it too. That at that point in the game, it felt like we were having a fun time at the stadium. But
everything seemed to be going right at that point.
Mm-hmm. I think we talked about this a little with the offense, but it just almost felt like one of those games where maybe the whole team had a little bit of loss of energy, loss of swagger, whatever you want to call it. At some point, I think the energy dipped, and it would have been really easy for the team to lose this game. I think people have tried to make comparisons to other seasons. I've heard 2018 Northwestern. I guess that's the optimist's take. If you're not so optimistic, I've heard the Army game. I think that one's maybe less analogous, but that's just my opinion. But I think to come out of this game with a win is positive. It's not the situation you wanted to be in, but I think it's a very good thing that they had this kind of lull in their energy and still found a way to, in the end, get it done, especially on the defense, which we didn't expect to be the unit that we would want to be relying on early in the year. So I think this game can be a positive. I think you just saw the signs of, guys who normally see the field well, like the running backs, like Corum, maybe not seeing things super well. I think there was maybe more missed tackles than we've seen in recent weeks. And I think that is, it's kind of energy, effort, focus. So there are signs that, other Michigan teams would have lost this game. And I think it's just a positive that they found a way.
Yeah, I think what you're saying and we've kind of thought in general is it's important to keep things in perspective. It's a win. It's an ugly win, but it's a win. This team was 2-4 last year. Still a new scheme on defense. Still first. I mean, I know Cade started a game last year, but a first-time starter quarterback. The offensive line. In terms of true returning starters, they returned a lot of starts, but in terms of true returning starters, you're talking three guys. So you got two new starters on the offensive line. I think we're seeing growth and development in a lot of positions. I mean, David Ojabo making huge play at the end of the game. That's the second time late in the game where he's brought out the spin move and made a monster play.
I do think Ojabo, I mentioned earlier, I think against Western, that he got edged a few times. And that was maybe something to watch going forward. I thought he was in addition to forcing the fumble there, I thought he actually had a strong overall game in run defense. There was one play that stood out to me where I think it was just a split zone run from Rutgers. I don't know if it was an option or not, but he squeezed the split zone blocker, the kick out guy, and I think forced the run into into the pile. It just seemed like he's playing with better technique and maybe a little more confidence with his strength. So yeah, like you said, he's we're seeing these young guys that maybe we thought too much of early. They're still improving a lot, but I think we're seeing the improvement.
Yeah, I noted a play. I thought they handled split zone pretty well for the most part. I noted a play earlier. I can't remember if it was early in the third or late second, but they ran split zone with the kick out away from Aiden. So, the number one hole you want on that split zone typically is right off the kick out block. So it essentially becomes a cutback kind of. And so they run it away from Aiden, and Aiden makes the play at the line.
Yeah,
Uh, it's just silly. They're reach blocking him, so they're stepping out to him on the opposite side of where the ball is going, and he still makes the play on. I mean, just he he's been pretty fun to watch. I mean, I think you mentioned that. I believe it was after the Washington game, but we might be witnessing kind of a special season from him, and I think that was spot on, and I think he's continued that. But that's
even his sack, he had to like basically run a little like circle around the tight end to get back to the draw. Like the tight end, more or less got a piece of him, and he kind of did a full orbit around the tight end's body to get back to the draw. Who we saw gash Michigan a few times on those option plays. He can move a little bit, and like the agility that Aiden displayed to do a full circle around a man before coming back to make the sack. I mean, he just does freaky things.
Yeah, that was I kind of noted that play as well. That was equally impressive for Aiden and equally stupid for Rutgers. Why
Yeah.
are you putting a tight end? And I know this happens all the time, and it seems like almost every time it happens, it ends poorly for the offense. And fans say,
Mm-hmm.
"Why would you block, you know, edge rusher A with
Yeah.
with the tight end in a pass game?" And you know, it's the most like low hanging fruit analysis, but it's true. It's just, what are you doing blocking him with a tight end? It's not like an all American tight end either.
Mm-hmm. Rutgers did
um,
a few things that was like, I gave them credit for how for their scheme on offense, but I think they also did a few things that was like, try to be the smartest guy in the room sometimes.
yeah, I agree. And they, it seemed like in the second half they were hitting us perfectly with, they'd get cover three and they'd hit the hitch, and then they they're running that inverted veer, and then they run a little bit of a counter off of it with that play action that they hit. It seemed like they
Mm-hmm.
were hitting, and then they got a little bit cute, and it was like Michigan just shut it down.
Yep.
Um, it just, I agree. The smartest man in the room thing sometimes it is not the best way to go about calling plays. But anything else before we head out of here?
I don't think so. Happy to be 4-0.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's important to keep the game in perspective, especially coming off of last year, and could be a lot worse. So things get better at. We'll see how they improve those things this week. As we mentioned earlier, we will have another episode this week, and hopefully Ronnie's feeling better for that. So for Contown, this is Matt, and this has been the Hail to Michigan podcast.